Hey everyone, and welcome. Today we are diving into a really powerful framework for telling stories that actually connect with people, that resonate, and that stick around in their heads. This whole system comes from the incredible work done at Story Center, and they've broken down the creative process into 7 really clear steps. So, you ready? Let's jump in. But before we even get into the how, let's start with the who. And by that, I mean you. Every single one of us has a perspective that is completely unique. A history that nobody else shares. So just think about this for a second. What's the story that only you can tell? Keep that question rattling around in the back of your mind as we go through all of this. I want you to think about this whole process like a journey. And these 7 steps, they're not like strict rules you have to follow, not at all. Think of them more like a map, a guide that's going to help you get from that first little spark of an idea all the way to a finished, totally compelling story. Okay, so our journey starts right here with the first act, finding your story's core. This is all about looking inward. It's about digging deep to find the raw material that's going to become the absolute heart of your narrative. So this whole first part is really about 3 crucial things. It's about figuring out what your story really means, what it feels like, and then zeroing in on that one single, most important point of change. Let's kick things off with that first one, owning your insights. So, owning your insights. What does that actually mean? Well, it's about digging past just the surface level stuff. Like, your story might seem like it's about my broken toaster, right? But maybe it's actually about losing your mom to cancer. And if you dig even deeper, it might be about learning how to trust again. That's the real journey right there, getting from just what happened to what I learned from it. And to get to that core meaning, you've got to ask yourself some pretty deep questions. Why are you telling this particular story? And why are you telling it right now? Who are you even telling it for? And this one's huge. What makes this your unique take on it? Answering these questions honestly, that's how you find your story's true north. And there is this fantastic quote that just nails it. It basically says that all stories, at their heart, are about one of 2 things. It's all about change. Either change comes to you, like a stranger coming to town, or you move towards change by going on some kind of journey. Simple, but so true. All right, so once you've got your insight, you have to own your emotions. And let's be real, emotions are never just one thing, are they? A story about a baby being born is full of joy, for sure, but it might also be laced with a deep fear of this new responsibility. A story about grief can be heartbreaking, but also filled with gratitude for what you learned. That emotional honesty, that's what lets an audience really connect with you. Okay, now for step 3, and this one is a big one. It's all about finding the pivotal moment. I want you to ask yourself, in your story, what was that single defining moment when everything shifted? It could be something huge and dramatic, or it could be a really quiet realization that you only understood years later. Pinpointing this moment is absolutely key. And why is finding that moment so crucial? Well, it's all about this classic idea, show, don't tell. See, telling is like giving a lecture. It's just stating, I learned to be brave. Boring. But showing is building a whole scene around that moment of change. It's letting the audience feel your shaky hands and your pounding heart so they discover the bravery for themselves. It's a world of difference. All right, so we've done all that deep internal work to find our story's core. Now what? Well, now we move into Act 2. Crafting the audience experience. This is where we take all that internal insight and emotion and we start to translate it into something an audience can actually see and hear. In this section is all about the next 2 steps, which are really about the artistry of it. How are you going to use visuals to get your meaning across? And how are you going to use sound to build a whole emotional landscape? When you're thinking about visuals, it's helpful to think about 2 different types. You've got your explicit images, those are the literal ones. You say, my childhood home, and you show a picture of your childhood home. Simple. But then you have implicit images, and these are metaphorical. An image of an ancient, sturdy tree might not be your actual house, but it could represent the feeling of stability that house gave you. This is where you get into the deeper stuff. And man, this quote just beautifully sums up the power of those images. Your words can describe a river, sure, but the right image can make your audience feel its vastness, its power, its flow. It's like an invitation for them to jump right in. So if the images are grabbing the audience's hand and showing them the river, what's your voice? Your voice is the riverbed. It's the foundation of a digital story. And look, this isn't about having a perfect, polished radio voice. It's about authenticity. It's about the unique character, the natural rhythm, and the raw emotional honesty that only your voice can bring. Okay, here we go. We've got our core idea. We've thought about how it's going to look and sound. Now for the final act, assembling and sharing your story. This is where all the pieces finally come together, and we get it ready to send out into the world. And the last two steps are really about the nuts and bolts of putting it all together, things like structure and pacing. And then it's about the purpose behind it all. Why are you sharing this in the first place? You know, there's this brilliant little rule for thinking about structure. They call it the cat and string rule. Think about it. If you make it too easy for a cat to get a piece of string, it gets bored instantly. If you make it impossible, it just gives up. The fun is in the game itself. And it's the same with your audience. You want to give them clues, make them work a little bit for the meaning. Don't just spell everything out on page 1. But to play that game, you have to be really, really tight with your words. In fact, for a digital story, the recommended script length is, get this, just 375 words. That's it. I know, that sounds almost impossible, right? But here's the thing. That limit is actually a superpower. It forces you to be absolutely ruthless, to boil your story down to its essential core. It makes you economize every single word. And it encourages you to let your images and your music do some of the heavy lifting, which ends up creating a way richer experience for whoever's watching. And that brings us to the final step, number 7, sharing your story. Before you hit publish, you just have to think about context one last time. Who is this actually for? What do they need to know before they watch it? How you frame the story can be just as important as the story itself. Because you see, when you finally share your story, you're not just finishing a project. You're completing your own personal journey with it. But you're also starting a brand new one. A journey that's going to take place in the mind and the heart of every single person who watches it. And that, my friends, brings us right back to the beginning. We started by asking what story only you can tell. So I'll leave you with one final question to think about. Every story has a purpose, whether it's to teach, to connect, to heal, or to inspire. What's the purpose of yours?